Welcome to HSK 3 week 2 day 1. Today we're going to be talking mostly review actually with some extra things thrown in there about telling time. Last week we talked about duration, how long something happened. Now we're going to do a lot of review about where to put the time phrase about when something happened, answering the question of when something happened. Okay, so you might remember that a time phrase talking about when something happened can go after the subject, right, directly after the subject, or before the subject. We can say 我明天去打篮球. I tomorrow 去 go 打篮球 to play basketball. I'm going to play basketball tomorrow. Or I could put the time phrase before the subject and say 明天我去打篮球. Also, I want to point out, this might not be quite as intuitive, but you can take longer time phrases. Most of which, I think all of which we've learned. We've talked about yǐqián or yǐhòu and deshíhou. And so that's before, after, and when something is happening. Like the phrase when something is happening. Like when I was a child. So that's a more complex phrase specifying when something happened. All those longer phrases can go before the subject or after the subject. The difference is that if it's before the subject, usually if it's a long phrase, you'll add a comma. And if it's between the subject and the verb, that long phrase gets no comma. It's just thrown in there. That's the thing with that. But okay, so I talked to a Chinese friend of mine about, is there a difference in emphasis with the time phrase, like 明天 in this sentence, with going after the subject or before? And it's slight, but he said that if I have it like this, which I would say is the most standard way to do it, unless it's super long, then it might feel a little more standard to put it, before. But if the most standard thing is to put it between the subject and the verb. That's where most adverbs go. This isn't an adverb, but it has a little bit of that function. 我明天去打篮球. So if it's written like this, it has a little bit more emphasis on answering the question, when am I going to go play basketball? So I know I'm going to play basketball. The question is when. So I'm telling you 我明天去打篮球. Okay? So if I put the 明天first and I say 明天我去打篮球, it feels like I'm answering the question, what am I doing tomorrow? Not so much when am I doing the thing I'm talking about. Does that make sense? So if I say 我明天去打篮球, it's answering the question of when I'm going to play basketball. If I say 明天我去打篮球, it feels like I'm answering the question, what am I going to do tomorrow? I'm going to play basketball. Does that make sense? It's cool. It's nuanced. It's fun. All right. But let's keep on moving. We've got another thing I want to talk about, a little complex thing. So a while ago, after I had filmed HSK 1 and talked about this idea of time going before or after the subject, I got a comment, in the comment section, someone had written a sentence asking a question about when something is going to happen. I believe, if I remember right, it was 星期几. And the question was something like, 星期几你去 do something. So 星期几 means week number, week how many, which means what day of the week. 星期几 means what day of the week. And it came before the subject, and I looked at it and I'm like, that sounds wrong to me. Like I never noticed that if you put a when question, if it's in question form, it sounds completely wrong to me to put it before the subject. It feels like it has to come after the subject. And I talked to my Chinese friend about it, same Chinese friend, and he said, no, it's not wrong to put the time question word before the subject, but it's much less common. And he said that if he does put it before the question word, before the subject, that he wants to put a na at the end of the sentence. That feels, better. And so here's my conclusion. It's not wrong in a question to put the question word about when, before the subject, but I would default to always putting it after the subject. And then when you answer the question, it'll often come in the same word order, the answer as the question was. Let me give you an example here. So this is like the way I'd say it was less natural or less common. So here's the when word right here, 什么时候, literally means when, what time, or what time. 什么时候you 去北京玩, when you go to Beijing to have fun. So 什么时候你去北京玩? So my friend said, I want to put a na here. So to make it feel like, so he said this is not wrong, but I'm saying it's not nearly as common, and I think this whole question harkens back to what I was talking about emphasis here. So if I'm answering the question, when is something going to happen, it usually comes after the subject. So the question, the literal question, when is something going to happen, would naturally come after the subject, right? Does that make sense? And so that's why I think this question word is going to often come here. So here it is in the more like common form. 你什么时候去北京玩? 你 you when 去北京玩. Now there are 什么时候 is the generic way to say when, but there are many other words to talk about when. For example, I think I have them written down here. We have 几点, that's what time. We have 几月, which month. We have 几年, which year. We have 星期几, which day of the week. And I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking of right now. Okay, so I want to do a quick review of telling time in terms of like how you talk about time, like a clock. So remember, just like in English doesn't always do this, but it does it in time. It goes from big to small, so hours and then minutes. So we have 几点, 点 is hours, so how many hours, so 3点, for example. And then we have 几分, how many minutes. So we could say 3:20, let's say 3点20分. So, and then if there's no fun and it's just hours, you can use the more full phrase 点钟, like 3 o'clock, 3点钟, but it's not necessary in most cases, to be clear. Okay, there is a couple, we learned about all this in HSK 1. There are a couple special words that can be thrown in there. So we have 几点半. So 3点半 would be 3:30 because 半 means half, so it's 3 o'clock and half. 3点半. We have 课, which can be talked about quarters. So we can say 3点一刻, that'd be 3:15, 3 1/4. And then we have we could also say 3点3刻, which is 3 3/4, like 3:45. Although I don't think that's very common. And then we have cha, which can come before or after, the cha phrase can come before or after the clock phrase. And that means, like when in English, we'd say 2:50. So we'd say 10 to 2, or 10 to 2. In Chinese, we'd say 3点差10分. 3点, 3 o'clock, 差3分. 10分, 10 minutes. Or we could say 差10分, 3点. I think that might be even more common. 差10分, 3点, to put it before the 3点. Okay, so there's a little review. Oh, there are many words, we also talked about this briefly, that you can put before the o'clock phrase that add to what time of day it is. So we have 凌晨 means very early in the morning, like 4 o'clock. 凌晨4点, so 4 o'clock early in the morning. 早上, which is normal morning. We have 上午, which is late morning. We have 中午, noon. 下午, afternoon. 晚上, evening. So that phrase goes before the o'clock phrase. 晚上7点. So that means evening, 7 o'clock. In English, we'd say 7 o'clock in the evening. In Chinese, it's just evening, 7 o'clock. Now we're going to continue our review and add a new point about some more telling time related things. Let's do a little bit more review on 以前, yǐhòu, and deshíhou, which all of those we've looked at before. But let me just run through a couple of example sentences and point out their use. So 以后 means after. We're starting with 以后 here. 我回家, I return home. I think I've mentioned before that when you say go home in Chinese, you never actually say the word go, 去. I mean, you don't say it in that way. 去家. You don't say 去家. You always 回家, return home, because home is like the base, and so you always return to that spot. You never like go there. You can say 回家去, which also means go, like you put the 去 after the 家, but that's a different thing. But my point is the main verb to go home, it's always 回家. Okay. 我回家以后 after. So after I go home, 我回家以后要做饭 will cook. So 我回家以后要做饭. So the remember this time phrase 回家以后. Yeah, I can point out. I'll underline this. This is the time phrase in this sentence. It's like return home after returning home. So I is the subject. I, after returning home, will cook. This can also go before, in some cases, before the 我. 回家以后我要做饭. 回到家以前, this is after arriving home. 回到家, not after, before. 以前. 回到家以前我已经吃了饭. So here, this is the time phrase right here. It is before the subject. So before arriving home, I already ate. That's what this sentence means. So 回到家, so literally return arrive home before. So before I arrived home, or before arriving home, I already ate. Here we have 的时候. This means at what time something happened, or when something happened. 我回到家的时候. So now this sentence is a little bit tricky, and I'll show you why in a second. So it means when I arrived home, my wife was already sleeping. 老婆 wife 已经 already 睡觉了, has gone to sleep. So yeah, my wife had already gone to sleep would be maybe a better way to translate that. The reason this is a little tricky is because this 我 is not the subject of the sentence. It is the subject of the time phrase. This is the subject, wife. It would be the same in English. When I arrived home, comma, my wife, subject of the sentence, had already gone to sleep. It's the same in Chinese. 我回到家的时候, comma, 老婆已经睡觉了. Okay, now the new point is that you can shorten the phrase 的时候 to just this. Sure. It's a little bit more, it sounds a little bit more formal. Even though it's shorter, it sounds a little bit more formal and less like colloquial. But you can say it in speech. It's just more common in speech to use the whole phrase 的时候. So these two, I guess I'll do double lines, would be omitted. So I could say 我回到家时, so not saying just the 时, 我回到家时, 老婆已经睡觉了. Let me show you some. So 时 and 的时候 mean the same thing, but 时 by itself sounds a little bit more formal and it's a little bit shorter, obviously. So let me show you this too. Here we have some more examples of the same thing. These are from All Set Learning, both of them, even though I didn't write it here. 我生气时不想说话. I 生气 angry 时 when. So when I am angry. 我生气时不想说话 do not want to speak. 不想说话. I don't want to speak when I'm angry. 会议结束时, 会議 conference, 结束 ended, 时 when. So when the conference ended, 老婆才來, wife or my wife didn't come until then. So this is like saying my wife didn't come until when I'm realizing this is a little bit hard to translate directly. Anyway, in English we said my wife didn't come until the meeting had ended. But this is actually saying, literally it's saying when the meeting ended, wife 才来, and 才 has that meaning of not until something happened. So it's giving the time, 会议结束时, that's the time, and then it wasn't until that time that wife 才来. So there you have it. 时 can mean 的时候. Hope that's clear. You are doing awesome. Keep up the good work. It's not easy to learn Chinese, but you can do it. Woohoo! You're a hero!